corporations to set up a challenge and set a reward to say, we want first, second, third to actually get something, or we want anyone who actually completes that race to get something, right? So that kind of gives a lot of flexibility to allow people to own that versus a system that's just constantly running. But you also do get rewarded for doing things like walking, obviously. The recommended amount of steps is 10,000 steps a day. If you get that up to about 95%, you get an NFT that's called a master stepper. Or if you're even, I mean, for every step you take, you do get rewarded some tokens, but that's not just for the steps alone. That's getting built out for the recommended amount of times that you should be able to take your blood pressure if you're taking it, or if you want to check your heart rate, for example. So the idea is just to kind of help people do what they usually would want to do anyway in tracking their health, but getting incentivized to create that data. And at the end of the day, we are generating data, right? Although we are rewarding people for keeping track of that data. Then the question becomes, what happens to all of that data that people are collecting? We did get a grant from Ocean Protocol to actually explore running a line into how can I call it? So all of the data that people are generating is owned by them, right? We don't have access to that unless they give us access to it. So the unless part is what we've actually worked on with the Ocean Protocol to try to figure out how do we create a channel to have kind of like a tap that can turn on and off the insight from the data that people are generating and incentivizing them for it. So we call that data staking, right? So they at the end of our second phase of the roadmap, users will be able to stake their data, which is really on the surface, allowing them to get paid for offering up their data to us. So that's a longer play. It's a bit different than what's on the market as well. I mean, of course, we do have the metaverse play to allow instructors to go ahead and set up yoga instructions and also games that are more fitness related, wellness related as well. But at the heart of what we're doing is just really trying to holistically support what people are already doing or should be doing about tracking their health. You know, how much are you sleeping? How much water are you drinking? Did you improve from yesterday, right? So it's not that you're just logging data, but that you're actually competing against yourself as well and not just against everybody.
So I love what you're talking about, and you're talking about community as well, I see on the Twitter, which I want to dive into. But before I do, I kind of wanted to ask about the data and about the monetization of it, and almost like how the competition element goes in there. So, because later on the show, we also have Thomas Greco, who I'll introduce, and he talks about how each company can issue its own currency, let's say, credits for its services. It sounds like if each person is putting out this health data, let's say, it's on a smaller scale, but they're almost getting paid for this data. So I wanted to actually ask you, what are the tokenomics that you have planned in this app? And how do you see the people monetizing their data or choosing to get rewarded for putting out all this data that the app collects about them?
Yes. So,
I think there's an echo. Wait,
I think there's an echo. Wait, getting feedback.
Turn down your mics. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So the idea is that we're rewarding the users with the Coral app tokens. Now the data will be weighted, and we're working on the mechanism to actually weigh the data. So if you're actually collecting your data on a daily basis, your file will be much larger to somebody who isn't collecting as much data on a daily basis. So the cleaner that data is, the idea is we're gonna have a database where if you turn on the tap to say, yes, I want to stake my data, you're getting rewarded for it, that data gets pulled out and we use it. Although you still have a copy of it, of course, that you can share with your doctor or, with your practitioner, so whichever way you want to use that data as well. But what we take is then offered to AI, science, and things like that. Now they'll get paid based on the weight of their data, and that's in CoreLab tokens. The idea is to reward people, yes, but of course, CoreLab is still a business, right? At the end of the day, we will have investors that also
Mm-hmm.
wants their own revenue at the end of the day. So, I mean, I am one of those people. I feel like, I mean, I've been a victim of Google, Facebook, just taking your data. And I mean, my why for this product actually started when I met Stacy. It was supposed to be an all women platform, and that's because I use an app called Flow, and at the time I was using Flow, I found out and the news broke that they were actually selling your personal, I mean, I guess your period and pregnancy data to Facebook and Google. And I felt so violated, that it's one thing if you asked me for it and you paid me for it, but you're selling something just because I'm using your platform. I mean, I'm completely lost, so that for me became a big thing, that ability for anyone to want to sell their data should be owned by them, and they should be able to decide if they want to or not sell their data. Personally, I won't sell mine, but I know people who are much in love with this idea of having that power to do so. So that's what's built into the tokenomics to allow people to be able to do that.
Totally
The
understandable.
main use of and the main uses of the token on that platform is to be able to transact. We will be able to actually use fiat as well, and it's not just going to be Coro tokens. I think we're at the point now where we're in a multi-chain environment, and just going with one chain is really a project suicide at least to me. So we're going to be, we're actually building on ERC 1155 at this time to allow us to be able to on-ramp more and more tokens over time. Of course, we're starting with one, but we'll be, going with a lot more of the EVM protocols to allow people to be able to use other tokens. Now, for us, for the platform, you will get a discount for using the CroLab tokens. But what I like to say is, I've been in this game for a long time, that if you're not looking at the charts, then you have to consider the way you look at your tokens as shares in a company that you own. Now, if you're a day trader, this might not be the project for you, but if you're looking for longevity and more of a company being built out around health, wellness, fitness, and eventually around the medical space and activities that happens within, healthcare and insurance, then you're very interested in following the entire roadmap for CoralApp.
A lot of what we talk about here on the Intercoin show is community. And, we talk about sometimes the difference between collaboration and competition, right, Stacy? We constantly,
Exactly.
yep, we discuss like what is it like to have a bottom-up approach versus a top-down approach. We live in a world where most of the time things are given to us top-down. And that's understandable because you need to start a project and you're starting a project here. You need to get investors and you need to finance it. But somewhere along the line, it just perpetuates itself, right? So typically what would happen is your VCs would enter at, let's call it round A round, B round, and eventually they sell it to Wall Street, and then Wall Street owns the shares in the project. So a lot of the stuff you talked about, selling the data to Facebook or whatever, are aspects of profit, right? Trying to create a profit and recoup the initial investors for their money. And a lot of what Web3 and let's call it Web4, a lot of the new blockchain-based stuff does is it kind of flips the script and it says, well, if you issue utility tokens to people and they buy, let's say, shares in this network, unlike the shareholders of shares, these holders are holders of utility tokens. It's the same distinction as, let's say, if I go to Disney World and I buy Disney dollars and I spend them at Disney World, right? Those are utility tokens of Disney World. Whereas if I buy shares in Disney Corp, I am sort of this part of this investor class of people who wants Disney to sort of extract rents, right? So Disney World connects people who come there with people who are served by people working at Disney World. And so in between there, Disney Corp can, extract rents and profits and give that to the shareholders of Disney World. So although the initial investment is necessary to actually get your project up and running, the question is who gets to own it in the long term? Does it get owned by the community, or does it get owned by essentially the investor class, whether that's the initial investors or the people who are going to own it? And that's a question I'd like to have right before I want to introduce also Thomas Greco. Before I introduce him, I just wanted to say one other thing. And as I noticed that during the pandemic, you said we've all experienced what it means to be disconnected and how the digital world enables new ways of social interaction. So for the last 10 years, I think the way I started on this journey was I started a company called qbix, and it's striking how much we are similar in like what we talk about, because the internet has the potential to unite all of us online, right? And the question is, how are we going to all coordinate our economic activity, our social activity, and so on? As someone who architects and builds these systems, and you know this because you're an architect as well, right? You're an engineer as well. We know that the initial conditions and how we design the system matters very much as to how it evolves. And so it's very, very important to get things right, but it's also the power's in our hands, almost more than a president of a country even, to create something that could change the world. Like Steve Jobs created the iPhone, Mark Zuckerberg, started Facebook. The initial design of how the system works will inform how millions of people eventually, if this is successful, will interact and how they will benefit. And that goes into the tokenomics. That also goes into the, like you said, how is the data being safeguarded and how is it being monetized? So I just wanted to let's have a three-way discussion. Before I want to introduce Dr. Thomas H. Greco. He has been a community currency economist for many years. I would say for how many years now? I would say several decades. In fact, he has seen, I think, ultimately everything from the Vogel experiment in Austria to things happening right now. And cryptocurrencies are just another...
I'm not quite that old, Greg, but yes, I'm quite knowledgeable and aware of the Vogel experience and the Veer Bank in Switzerland, which used to be called the Veer Economic Circle. But we'll get into that in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, I just wanted to say that throughout the 20th century, there have been many experiments with community currencies. Some of them succeeded, some of them not so much, like Ithaca Hours, Vermont Mountain Dollars. I think the Berkshires are still around. They're still being used. There's stuff over the ocean, across the ocean in London. Elena knows about this, in Brighton pounds and Bristol pounds. And then, of course, there are ways to get money into the hands of the people. So there's the Manitoba experiment in Canada with the Mincome. There's always renewed interest in UBI. But what's notable is that UBI is not really talked about in the sense of community currencies, but only talked about in the sense of reusing the same federal money that the government issues. So to introduce Dr. Greco, he has been involved in alternative ways of issuing money. And we're going to talk about what is money and how is money used and what is good for, and how these things can be used to give communities a chance to almost break free of the control that governments have. So I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself, Dr. Greco, and then we can all have a discussion together about the Coral app and about and the wider picture of how the community can generate its own tokens and what good does that do for the community?
Okay, Greg, thank you for that introduction. Let me just make a couple points. First of all, you're showing the Wikipedia page about me, which I must say has not been updated, and they will not allow me to update it. I don't think there's even mention on there of my my book or my website. I'm not allowed to post my website on Wikipedia or Facebook. I'm being censored across the board. I still have a Facebook account and a Twitter account, but it's been downgraded, so I don't know how many people get to see what I post. Also, I'm a PhD dropout. I have an academic career of 14 years behind me, but I never completed the PhD, even though I had tenure at Rochester Institute of Technology. When I got into exploring the problems with the money system, I decided I was done with academia, and I didn't bother to complete the PhD. So anyway, my work goes beyond community and complementary currencies. I've written 4 books on the subject. My website is beyondmoney.net, and that's the main one. And there's a wealth of information that I've put up on that website over the last, I don't know what, 14 years maybe. But, you know, as you said, my work in this field goes back more than 40 years, from the mid-1970s up until today. So let me make the point that there is a problem with our money system, and that's what got me started on this whole thing. And my first book was about the problems with the money system. It was called Money and Debt, A Solution to the Global Crisis. The second book was looking at possible solutions, decentralized solutions, where I talked about community currencies. New Money for Healthy Communities was the title of that book. And then the third book was an updated and improved version of that called Money, Understanding and Creating Alternatives to Legal Tender, which was published by Chelsea Green Publishers, and that was in 2001. And the latest book, The End of Money and the Future of Civilization, also published by Chelsea Green in 2009. Hard copies are out of print, but the book is still available in Kindle edition on Amazon.com, and there are a number of used copies available from various sources on the internet. So basically, the problem with the conventional money system is it creates money on the basis of interest-bearing debt, which creates a growth imperative for the economy, which is impossible to sustain over a long period of time, given the physical limits of the earth. The other thing is that we have bankers that have interposed themselves between producers to extract rent in the form of interest. And so what we have for several hundred years now is an increasingly disruptive, unsustainable, and extractive system of money. And I foresee the day when we will put an end to that kind of money system and the kinds of banks that we have today, and go back to a system that is reconnected to the real economy. Right now, we have a big disconnect between the money economy and the real economy of goods and services and material things, and we need to make that reconnection. Now, the purpose of money fundamentally is to enable the easy exchange of goods and services and other valuable items between producers. The bankers really produce nothing. What they do is supposedly provide a service, but this service has been totally corrupted. The service is a credit clearing service. And I want to talk about the evolution of money as a way of getting into this. First of all, we had commodity money. Many things were used as money in the early days. In the US colonies, before the formation of the United States, we had tobacco, we had animal hides, we had bullets, salt, many things, many different commodities were used as exchange media because they were generally useful and widely desired. So the use of commodities as money, eventually gold and silver, became the preferred commodities because they were small, lightweight, and easy to carry around and valued quite widely. But they were still commodities, and what we had, even with commodity money, was a barter exchange system where you exchange your gold or silver for whatever good or service you wanted from a producer. But then when banks started as depositories of precious metals, they would issue what you might call a warehouse receipt or symbolic money that was redeemable back for gold or silver from the banker. And the bankers noticed that, well, people weren't coming for their gold or silver, so they issued more warehouse receipts or more paper currency than they had gold to redeem it. So we had a combination of symbolic money and credit money. If the credit money was issued on a sound basis, that was okay, and it helped to provide an elastic supply of money. But there was inevitably a lot of malfeasance on the part of bankers, where they would over-issue credit money or issue credit money on the basis of an inadequate basis or no basis at all. And there would be bank runs, and this would basically expose the fraud of having this so-called fractional reserve system. But we can go to a completely credit-based exchange system, but it has to be decentralized and not controlled by a central authority like the government or the central banks in colonial value. And we can do that. It's being done now. The quintessential model for that was the VIR, that's WIR, that was created in Switzerland during the very severely affected by the dearth of money in circulation at the time. So they got together and figured out how they could...
In the last several years, which are not backed by anything. There's no economic activity that they lead to, and this is called utility in the crypto space, not enough utility. A lot of it is just rampant speculation. So instead of the banks lending out money at interest, okay, and having a fractional reserve, it's instead the investors who pump and dump a token, come in early, they buy up a token, and on the exchanges, the token goes up due to a speculative bubble, and then they sell to the public, and then the public essentially buys, and at some point, the thing becomes a bubble, and it's clear that whatever utility the project was going to do is not very competitive in the first place because it doesn't compete on the global market very successfully. So a lot of it has become marketing a token, telling people it's going to go up in price, and people not realizing that at some point they're going to run out of people. And so it's essentially a lot of what's happening in Web3 has become sort of Ponzi schemes of tokens being issued but not backed by anything. And what I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to tie it back with the Coral app as well as a great example of something that is backed by value, is what we say in the crypto space is utility. And in the case of Bitcoin and others, people say that Bitcoin is backed by the amount of work it takes to mine the coins. Now that's a separate thing in my mind. That is securing the network. That is a service, to be sure, but that is about the only service that is really offered for Bitcoins all the time. Most of the services, goods and services in the world are not sold for Bitcoin today. So, but there is a question of what backs the currency. And I think I would love to ask this question. The Coral app, it seems that the tokens would be backed by what the individuals do, right? They give their time, they give their data, they use the app, and by doing those actions in a small way, everyone is generating the currency that is valuable to someone. Why is it valuable? I wanted to ask that question going back to the Coral app. Why is the Coral token valuable, besides the speculative aspect, of course?
I definitely agree with you about the space and what's happened, and the idea around people just. I think anyone who's able to master marketing could just about spin up any degen coin, and you see the charts on PooCoin on a daily basis. And of course, yes, everything is just driven by speculation. Most projects don't have any utility. And I think part of what has kept me up at night is part of what you're talking about, right? I started this project in 2020. It's been a little over 2 years that I've been working on this and asking myself that same question. Now, yes, so what you said is actually absolutely right? The community that's using the app and walk-in and doing all these health checks and checking their stress level and things of that nature are the ones that are actually, the owners of this project at the end of the day. It's not going to be owned by some big corporation that's going to put this on a stock exchange, at least not under my watch, right? That's not the idea of decentralization. And that's really, what we're after, is that we build something, and the community part is at the heart of this. Without the community, this is not going to work. And just like any other blockchain project, it's heavily dependent on the community to participate. And I asked myself the question, and I've tried to ask a lot of people as well. Tell me one current Web2 platform that I can go to go and watch or purchase or rent crowd sourced health or wellness related content. And haven't found that yet, except for if you go on YouTube, right? So you Google, but YouTube is also a big marketplace. So the idea is to have this marketplace that's backed by the community, and really everything we're doing is surrounded by the community. We have a community aspect to this, the chat feature that allows people to do the whole communication thing, set up their own little groups, have conversations. Without that, we're not going to have any company or any project. And I think that's at the heart of what we're doing. That's at the heart of what our tokenomics looks like. That's at the heart of how this would generate income. Now, on the investment side of it, yes, we have investors that are interested to come on board, but based on the laws of where I'm, registered and what's coming down the pipeline in the US, there's only so much that you can do. So I'm looking at so many different things, because I do want to give back dividends based on what the profitability of the platform looks like back to the holders of the token, right? So if you're holding the token, holding that also means that you get dividends at the end of every quarter. I'm not really into snapshots that's been announced, but there will be a snapshot involved. So whichever time that you actually catch that snapshot is really when you own your token. Because so what usually happens is on a snapshot, people know exactly when it is, then they go dump it on the market. No, you hold it for as long as you hold it, because you're really holding your shares. So that's kind of the model that I'm after. I'm a long distance runner, and I'm not trying to sprint this one. So that's why Coral App is the way it is.
I think it's fantastic you're talking about community. As I've been talking to different people around the world, I've had to talk to economists, regulators, technology people, and everyone has a slightly different idea. There's people that talk about fiat currency, right? There's Warren Mosler who talks about modern monetary theory, how the government can print money. And then we talk about, with Thomas, about how companies can issue their own credit. And there's all this in between, right? But I think one thing that is common to all of it is that there's a community, right? So we all speak English. Like I give these examples of language, culture, right? We all speak English because at one point, the British Empire, among other empires, they took over a lot of land, a lot of maybe drove out some native populations as well from there. But eventually everyone learns English for one reason or another. It could be because, during the Spanish-American War, the Philippines learned English and they used to know Spanish. But at the end of the day, people self-select into it. They select into a language because they see the network effect that if you learn English, you're going to have access to all this stuff. And so the same way here is like, and I want to ask this to Thomas, is like, okay, if I have a specific concern like IHOP, right, a specific franchise or company, they already have a form of credit, which is essentially their anonymous gift cards, right? I actually find these very interesting because they're one of the only ways to stay anonymous. If you buy an Android phone, you could buy a Google Play, and you can almost like create an anonymous identity. So these are a form of credit. But as you can see, they're all here on the rack, and there is no way to do a clear, sorry, I can't speak today, credit clearing exchange, because once you have one of these cards, you kind of have the private key. And if you try to sell it to someone else, you still have that key. So no one is going to buy a lot of it because they have to trust you. So these cards are not exactly the best way. They're non-transferable, if you will. So there's not really a way to create an exchange with them. But if you take away that aspect and you make it transferable and you make the technology work, then what do you see as these issuers all joining into one community in order to make their tokens more valuable, as opposed to having each one separately? Do you see the strength in numbers, Thomas, with these things?
Well, that's precisely the kind of thing that commercial trade exchanges do. They pull together a whole bunch of different providers of goods and services, and they allow them to maintain their own credit on a ledger. Well, there's a central ledger that's maintained by the trade exchange. And when you sell something, you get a credit. When you buy something, you get a debit to your account. So, this is the primary feature that I focus on in my books, and this is the future of money. That's why I say the future of money is no money. It's simply keeping track on a ledger of debits and credits of the various participants in the exchange process. So, a voucher, which is what you're talking about in these gift cards, a voucher, if it's transferable, can serve as currency. So IHOP, if they wanted to issue, let's say, a paper voucher, redeemable on demand by the bearer, you would have a private currency, IHOP currency. Any producer that's trusted, that provides valuable goods and services, could issue a currency into circulation. Like the solar dollar proposal that I made that's on my website. An electric utility company could issue its own currency, solar dollars, and then redeem that currency when you pay your electric bill. The problem with most of the private currencies so far in the community space is that they've been sold into circulation, not spent into circulation. And this is the key difference and the key point to remember. The ones that you mentioned earlier on, I think Stacy mentioned them, Bristol pounds and Brixton pounds and all kinds of community currencies in the UK, and Berkshires in the US, and Salt Spring Island dollars in Canada. These are all sold for cash. They don't give us any independence from the conventional money system, because you have to have conventional money to bring them into existence. But, as a credit obligation, any trusted producer of goods and services can spend their currency into circulation. That is, use it to pay for the things that they need, the goods and services they need to provide their service or produce their goods. Now you have a completely independent medium of exchange that can circulate any number of times before the issuer redeems it. And now we have local homegrown liquidity that doesn't require any participation by banks, or any use of conventional currency. So
that's
once you understand that point, you're on your way to creating an independent system of exchange.
That's exactly what we're passionate about at Intercoin. Intercoin has been about essentially empowering people to create their own currency the same way that they can launch their own website and their own blog. It's very hard to sort of, sure, you can make a ERC20 token, and people have done this, but that's kind of where everything stops. And then people just get attracted to the speculative aspect, right? With the Poo coin. It's called Poo coin because these coins are affectionately called shit coins. Originally, the word shitcoin meant anything that's not Bitcoin by Bitcoin maximalists, but it came to mean actual shitcoins, meaning projects that have absolutely nothing going for them except the fact that they have a community that hypes the project. Like over here, we've got auto compounding, whatever, earn real money. But really, all it is shuffling money. Look at that, APY. But it's denominated in the currency itself. So in other words, it's just shuffling money from later investors to early investors, but really has nothing outside of itself. And so with Intercoin, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, let me go back to what you were saying earlier. You know, basically the cryptocurrencies, so-called, that have put into circulation are almost all virtual commodities. They're created by someone in some process. Let's take Bitcoin because that's the first one. And it's basically analogous to gold. You said that Bitcoin is based on work, but is it work that has any market value? And my position is no, it doesn't have any market value. There's nobody willing to pay for the work that was done in burning up a whole lot of electricity to generate Bitcoins. It's similar to what we did with gold, you know, but gold has a multi-thousand-year history of being a fetish and valued by people, particularly in unstable times when the monetary system is abusing their issuance of other forms of money. So it's said that you dig gold out of one hole in the ground and bury it in another, called a vault. So, you know, what's the value in doing that, except it provides a hedge against inflation when the system of money is being badly abused. And we're seeing that happen today. People are fleeing into gold and silver and any other real valuable item like real estate that people expect to hold their value in comparison to dollars or euros or other fiat currencies.
I want to add to that one other use, I think, source of demand for gold and commodities. When you see, I think, the kings, and in this case we call them the big whales in the crypto space, whether it's institutional or any other demand for reserves by big banks, it's for one reason or another. In Russia right now, they obviously had been stockpiling gold for years because they were anticipating sanctions. And even that gold is, you know, would have to be sold on the black market or to other countries that don't block the sales of that gold. But in the end of the day, I think the demand for these commodities, like you're talking about, could be either driven by actual need, like when rice was a commodity money in Japan, people actually ate the rice. You know, when Egypt stockpiled a bunch of grain in storehouses, they actually stored it because they actually needed that grain. And the famous story in the Bible where they stockpiled for 7 years and then they were able to, everyone came to them. Whereas with gold, I mean,
sure,
you know, yeah, go ahead.
Commodities that are useful, commodities that have a use value will be in demand. They are in demand, but then you have the storability problem, you know, and the deterioration with time and you know, the storage of those commodities and keeping them safe is a problem. But same is true with gold and silver.
So with crypto, there is no storage problem. Bitcoin can be stored in any amounts, and it can be transferred in any amounts, which makes it digital money in some way superior to gold, in the sense that you don't have to have an armored truck, you don't have to, try to risk moving it. But the thing is like,
That's true. But what is the use value of Bitcoin?
that's exactly what I'm getting at. So there is no use value that has sprung up. And I think the three reasons that we go into is because it's based on blockchain, and it's because it doesn't scale. But I want to sort of get back to the economics of it. And I also want to...
Let me just add that there is a potential use value to Bitcoin, and that is as an independent private medium of exchange, which is something that is going to be needed and very highly valued when the government requires everyone to have a bank account and cash is eliminated and everybody has to have their money, so-called, as a balance on an account, which can then be blocked or limited in terms of what you can spend it on. So this is coming, and it's coming very soon.
And that's what I want to get at, is that I think the demand for money has traditionally come from either the top down, which is most of the cases. With gold, it was the kings and the nobles who required the gold for their projects. Okay. And gold does have unique properties. It is the most least reactive metal. It doesn't oxidize. There's things that make it easier to use, and it's pretty malleable and so on. And it's a good disinfectant maybe. And silver is as well. So there are certain things that they could use it for, but ultimately the demand came from frivolous, uses of gold. And similarly, I think the big whales, institutional, whether it's demand for Amazon shares or Tesla, or whether it's demand for anything, or not demand, the opposite when they short it. They push around these markets, and they create really the hype cycles. With the case of gold, the hype cycle has been going on for thousands of years, but when it comes to other asset classes, right, the demand has typically come from top down. And what I'm interested in is usually the opposite. I'm interested in the bottom up approach, right, which is what we were talking about. Each person, each company issuing its own currency, that is the source of the currency, and it's also the sink of the currency, because then they accept it in exchange for their own goods and services. What I would like to know is, look, when people issue their own things, it's very decentralized. But the thing is that a bunch of people with decentralized guns and whatever is very weak. You can easily have another group of people come together and build a bunch of tanks or planes, right? And then they will take them one at a time. They'll take them on and they'll destroy them. So I think it is important for people to join into communities, like we join with the English-speaking community or Spanish-speaking community or a religion or anything like this. And so at that point, the question is, how is the community organized? That's the bottom-up approach that I'm interested in exploring.
Yeah, me too. And that's precisely what needs to be done. We have to organize into communities or organize into groups in order to maintain our independence and be able to assert our strength. There's strength in numbers. So let's go back to a company issuing its own vouchers, exchangeable vouchers. Traditionally, that would have been done in the form of paper. You would have a paper note that says, this note is redeemable for electric power at such and such electric company. So now let's go to the crypto space. It doesn't have to be paper. It can be in the form of an electronic credit on a ledger somewhere, as in a commercial trade exchange, or it could be in the form of a token. The electric company could issue a token, an electronic token, that would be backed by the services that it has to offer. So any company that has goods or services that are in demand in the marketplace could issue such a crypto token. That's different from a cryptocurrency that is created like Bitcoin or many of the others, the shit coins that you mentioned. So the basis for creation is the ability to provide something that's valued by the market. And that's the key point. Mm-hmm. In order for a crypto token to be valued, it has to be redeemable for something that's valued by the market.
So with that in mind, Stacy, if you want to, if you'd like to bring in,
has to be a credible.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I just want to.
Yeah, we kind of did the crypto aspect. Can we just jump in a little quickly here about the NFT aspect of this? Today's guest, we have Jamie here, the founder of Real Nifty. Jamie, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, thanks for that, Stacey. Yeah, great to be here. Seems like a really interesting topics going on in the room, and it's great to be invited to be a part of this. My name is Jamie Parmenter, and I'm the CEO of Real Nifty. Background about myself and how I was very nicely welcomed into the Web3 space, as most people are. So I was actually started my NFT journey back in the beginning of 2021. So before that, I was actually founder of a website called Vinyl Chapters, which I built up over 4 to 5 years. So yes, I've grown up around the music industry. I've been in radio stations and media outlets all my life. And I basically went towards this music content area, which to me was really interesting. And how I started this was I used to get people to hold up a vinyl record and then they tell me a story about it. And then I'd take a photo and I add it to the website. And this just basically showed me how strong community could be. People started discussing really great topics within these photos and stories that I was collecting. And it just grew this really nice community, which people were a part of. And then this gradually evolved into a website that I created called Vinyl Chapters, which then grew itself into being more around new music, news, reviews, features, that sort of thing. And also a forum for people to come and really sort of reciprocate and discuss music, which was fantastic. And I managed to sort of monetize that in a way. But the point being here is this actually led me into the next stage of my career. So I started writing more about music and technology, which obviously led me to NFTs. So I wanted to teach my readership about what NFTs were, what Web3 is, how it all works. So I decided to do explain a piece about NFTs. And to do this, I purchased my first NFT, which was actually, some of you might remember at the beginning of last year, there was the band Kings of Leon. They actually released a physical digital NFT piece where you actually got access to a downloadable album with the NFT sale. But not only that, you also got a real life vinyl edition. Now, this was really interesting to me, obviously being from the music industry. And I basically went through all this process with my followers, explained what NFTs are, what gas fees are, the usual stuff that people need to know when they first get into the space. And this basically did pretty well, this article. But what I wanted to put forward within this article was the pitfalls and how we can actually improve the way people use this technology. So, for example, on this first drop, it actually, from buying the NFT to actually receiving the physical product, the vinyl record, it actually took about 10 months for that to come, which obviously is a long time to wait for something. And on top of this, the organizers and the promoters of this, they were actually trying to charge the community $100 for delivery. And this was outside of the US. So obviously, as you know, with communities and Web3, there was a lot of arguments. This all kicked up, and it was great because it was great to see how communities can affect how projects going forward. And you really have to have strong utilities and really protect your own community. And this was at the very early stages. So I think a lot of people learned from this. And so, yeah, I released this article, and it got picked up by the BBC website. I was quoted on a few different publications. And then I found myself on TV and radio in the UK talking about NFTs. And this gradually led me to the founder of Real Nifty, who we just had some fantastic conversations with. And we were both on the same wavelength when it came to what we can do with the physical and digital worlds when it comes to NFTs and Web3. We were both exactly on the same wavelength, that you can't spend all your time in the digital world, and obviously we want to bring the physical world into the aspects that we could as well, but in a really usable way, and really just help people understand what NFTs are and what they can do with their projects. So we kind of grew Real Nifty to be this kind of NFT agency which really traverses the physical and digital. So what we do overall, we work with businesses, creatives, artists, clients, to really sort of tailor their ideas around what drops they can do for their NFTs, what ideas are viable, and how we can actually grow their presence within the space. And we do this through our current website, which we have drops, minting capabilities. We help them strategize where they're coming from, market their drops, and also kind of leverage our communities that we're growing on our socials, and of course through Discord. So as you can see on the background screen at the moment, there's one of our first projects that we did with an artist called Matt Vey. So this is called Mosaic NFT. And it was a very physical and digital drop that we were really proud of, and has actually just on the verge of selling out this week. So how this actually worked was Matt Vey, he's actually a Canadian artist, but he's actually been living in China for the last 20 years. He has a family over there. And what he's done, he created 1,250 real-life mosaic pieces, which we were calling tiles. You can see one of them in the picture there. So what we actually did as Real Nifty, we helped Matt produce this amazing drop where we created 1,250 NFT counterparts to these physical pieces. And what you can do, you can actually go onto our website and mint them yourself. And if you collect 9 of these NFTs, what you can do is a process called crystallization. So with the crystallization, what you can do is once you've purchased 9 of these mosaic NFTs, you can actually go onto a grid within our website, a 3x3 grid, and you can basically place these NFTs within this grid. And then what you can then do is move them around into a design of your choice. So you can click on the mouse to move these pieces around. So what you're actually doing is creating your own piece of work from what the artist has already done. So it's almost like a self-project. You're actually creating something for your own NFT. So what actually happens when you've done that, you can press the crystallization button, and then it crystallizes that in that design. What that then does is burn those 9 NFTs you have purchased and replaces it with a one-off combined 3x3 image of your NFT. So it's a design completely made by you. And this is where the real great function comes in, is what happens then is that image is shown to sent to Matt Vey, the artist. And then in the real world, he will take those physical pieces and fuse them together in the design that you've created. So you're almost like working with the artist himself. Then what happens is that physical piece is then sent out to you in the real world. And then you end up with both a physical and a digital product as well. So, I mean, they match in both the real world and digital world. So, I mean, this was a great first project for Real Nifty to go through because it combined all the things that we're passionate about. But also, what the other layer of this drop that is will be very interesting to some is it actually has a metaverse element. So Real Nifty is also intrinsically involved with a metaverse and part owners of one, which is called the Confluence. For any of you that follow Real Nifty already, you may have seen some of the videos we've been putting up on our socials. So the Confluence is kind of a medieval style metaverse at the moment, and it's being added to every day. So I guess if you're a player of the game, which you'll notice the kind of medieval style of what they're playing for. And yeah, I mean, it's completely in development in the moment and should be live for anyone to use in the next few months. but we're really trying to kind of work with projects at the moment to really grow them within the metaverse, and having some really great events in there at the moment. So we've got a project called Rogue Fox Guild that is an NFT project that has a building within our metaverse. We work with another project called Meta Muscle. So we've actually built them out a gym within there, because they're all about fitness and continuing that through the digital world. And then we're also working with other artists as well. So we have a gallery by a fantastic NFT artist called Mel Hart's in there, which is great to see all these people in one place. And what we do, we usually open up the metaverse every now and again for special events. So, for example, last week we opened it up for a Easter event where basically people had to jump into there and find Easter eggs within there, and whoever found the most Easter eggs would then get given an NFT at the end of it. So it's a really good idea to sort of really get people involved within our projects and actually grow the influence and the community based around them. And I mean, that's also the other thing you can do with these mosaic NFTs, is you can actually trade in 9 of these NFTs for a building within this metaverse. So as it grows, obviously you'll be able to have be able to do more things with the building. You'll be able to decorate it in ways you want, but you also be able to put your NFTs on the wall, any of the ones that you own, and almost operate as a kind of gallery. So we're really trying to. That's just basically an overview of what we're trying to do at Real Nifty at the moment, and really sort of work with projects in the ways that benefits the physical and the digital. But as we come to the future of Real Nifty, I think what we're trying to do then is actually build out our own marketplace. So this will be the next stage, and it's actually coming in the next few months. It's actually in development. And what we're trying to do with our marketplace is actually be a bit different, just like the rest of the projects we work with. Is we really want to focus on the physical side of NFTs a bit more user-friendly. If, for example, you use a platform like OpenSea, usually if there's a redeemable physical project or real-life experience, you'd actually have to go away from OpenSea. You'd actually have to click a link and actually go and redeem your product elsewhere. So what we're trying to do with the Real Nifty marketplace is actually have that all in one place. You'll be able to do that straight through whichever collection you're looking at or whichever NFT you're looking at, and actually be able to grow that from there. So that's what we're looking to do, working with logistics companies on delivery, because we think that's a big part going forward of Web3, of how we can actually combine this physical and digital space in even more detail.
So fantastic.
So, yeah, sorry if I spoke too long, but I thought I'd just get it all out there.
No, it's all good. I wanted to, as the host of the Intercoin show, whenever I host this show, I try to tie it all in and see what the common denominator is. And I see that whether, we're talking about Real Nifty, when we're talking about the Coral app, it's all about community, right? I see everywhere people building communities. As I think that's the common denominator for a lot of the stuff that we do at Intercoin as well. And I think ultimately that is where people are always looking to go, right? It's just there's different ways to get there. So to Thomas, by the way, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are becoming.
I'm familiar with that.
Right.
The role that I see for NFTs is as a store of value. A currency is all about the exchange problem, providing a medium of exchange. An NFT is useful in saving, storing value. So I'm very interested in the development of that space, and I would like to see actual instances of NFTs that can be bought and sold using not only fiat currencies, but also alternative currencies.
I find it interesting that I think as I've been building out Intercoin and I've been building out qbix, I've become a big believer in communities is where the value resides. And what I mean by that is actually very, maybe profound. It's that the value of money is that you can exchange it for something you need or want when the time comes, right? And for that to happen, the money needs to be accepted. So if right now I came back from Istanbul, and in Istanbul I was using Turkish lira. If I use that in New York City, many times it wouldn't be accepted, no matter how many liras I have. Maybe if I have a really large amount, people will take a look and try to liquidate it. But mostly people don't want to be bothered. And so there's a network effect whereby the community that I'm in provides goods and services, lets me eat, let me satisfy my Maslow's needs. And that's like a very, very important, perhaps the most important value for me is survival and taking care of my basic needs. And then after that are these needs for art, aesthetics, music, right? And going to concerts and all these other things. So, you know, when things are in dire straits, people don't necessarily go to posh concerts. But when things are great, we have this amazing layer of art and so on. That's not to say art can inspire even during wartime and other things. But what I'm saying is there's sort of a little bit of a hierarchy in needs versus want. Now, when it comes to storing value, I think that the community ultimately decides the value, right, of NFTs and everything else, or Picasso paintings, in other words. So I just wanted to ask all of you, what do you think in terms of like the pricing, market value of NFTs? What drives it, and ultimately, what drives the demand for NFTs? Maybe I'll put it that way.
Well, supply and demand as everything else, but it depends on the market. You know, access to the market. Is the market free? How many participants are there in that market? The usual things.
Yeah, for me as well, it does depend on which project it is, and completely the marketing behind it is a big win for some people. For example, I mean, I'm sure some of you guys would have heard of Moonbirds, which actually minted recently, which is, I guess, a good example. The project itself was actually the 2.5 ETH per Moonbirds. I mean, it's extremely high compared to a lot of other projects, but it completely sold out. And now Moonbirds are sat at 18 ETH at the moment, last time I checked. So, I mean, obviously, for some people, it could leave quite a sour taste because they almost feel like they've been priced out of the market, and others would actually go for a lower price project. But
sorry to interrupt you. Can you spell Moonbirds? I wanted to put it up on the screen.
Sorry, it's a Moonbird, M-O-N birds. Sorry, it's probably my English accent.
Could you spell that again? I'm sorry, O-O-N?
M-O-O-N.
Moonbirds. Moonbirds.
Moonbirds.
Do I have it right? Moonbird.
That's right, yeah. So that's the project.
All right. I thought you said mean birds, like angry birds.
No, so basically, yeah, this project was, I don't think that's the right one. They almost look like owls, if you can show it in the back.
All right.
So if you go to
there's a lot of knockoffs, by the way. I should mention with the space, there's a lot of concern with knockoffs as well these days. Okay.
Yeah, but anyway,
this is an example. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an example of like where it's going at the moment. I mean, there's these projects that some people will put extortionate amounts on them. And I mean, this project does seem to have some good utilities, but they haven't really been described of a day very well. And we're not exactly sure where these utilities will go. Yeah, I mean, and then you get other projects that are about $100 per NFT, and they have some fantastic communities, and they just grow over time, and then they might hit these high prices. But for me, it all depends if you can get that community behind you, the marketing behind it, and also what the market, as Thomas said, what price the market actually decides what they want to pay for it. I mean, that's it. It's supply and demand at the end of the day.
What about, so I want to get back to the Coral app, because I think here we've got the fungible, right? Do we also have NFTs here as well in the Coral app, or is it mostly fungible tokens?
Yes, so we do have the NFTs. Like I mentioned, people will get NFTs as rewards for doing these health activities. However, the one from the main project itself will be what I like to call gym passes. So anyone who actually owns those will have access to the entire platform, unlimited, as long as they actually have that in their wallet. So they'll be able to access the entire platform with that wallet. I mean, with that NFT in their wallet. So I guess that's why I named it the Gym Pass, because it gives them access to the entire platform.
Well, you know what gyms are famous for is the fact that people sign up, like myself, and never go. So
that's very true. It's very true, but it also gives you access to more than just the gym. And that's, I do need to rethink that name, because some people might go to the gym and they're more, I guess, of a yogi, right? And that's also part of the platform. And if you're into dance, right?
Right, physical activities.
Yeah. Yes, I enjoy Pilates. I don't have to go to the gym for that. I could do that in front of my television. So I need to rethink the name, but that's the idea, right? It's this pass that gives you 100% access to the entire platform.
Well, working with a lot of these projects and looking at the wide range of them, some of the patterns that I see is that people start to offer this utility, like, for example, Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? That became a very big one after CryptoPunks. It's probably the second biggest, or maybe the biggest, well known. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, the utility was the yacht club, right? You could attend events. Supposedly, if you own one of these, you could come and you can attend. But of course, nobody lives next to those yacht club events, maybe a few people. So it's more of a, let's say, probabilistically very unlikely that you'll ever use this. And similarly, I've seen people where the probability is 100% that you can use it, but it's metaverse, right? So metaverse doesn't cost you anything to have a virtual world where lots of people can join. And what's interesting about that is, like any other software or digital content, once it's created, it's very easy to create more of it, right? And make copies of it. Like, for example, Thomas, your book, right? There's a limited run and it's out of print. But technically, the electronic version, or even the paper one, right? Without the government and copyright laws, people could, if they really liked your book, just make as many books as there was demand for. So with digital content like metaverses and everything else, I see for the next 5 years people creating these things, and then it's just like any other software. It's easy to copy, but there's going to be some mechanism to restrict the circulating supply, if you will. So I find
that gets us into a whole other realm, which is, does information really want to be free? My publisher has rights because it costs them money to produce this book, but I also have rights. As far as my rights are concerned, I would like people to copy it far and wide. But my publisher has to recoup their investment in producing the actual physical book. So I don't know where you draw the line here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point by Thomas there, and I think another user case, if we take it back to just a Bored Ape, you actually own the IP to that NFT itself and anything to do with it. So, for example, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, an entrepreneur, I can't remember, I think it was Andy Nguyen. So he opened a Bored Ape restaurant, basically called in California, called Bored and Hungry. So he actually owned a couple of Bored Apes, and he used these as the marketing and everything behind the restaurant, and he has them littered all over the establishment because he actually owns the IP. So it was very interesting to see that, and buy a Bored Ape and do exactly the same. And it's interesting with these projects. So we actually completely own the IP to it when you actually purchase it. And I guess it can be done in like I said, the book industry as well.
It's very interesting. And I think with NFTs, we sort of have experimentation around voluntarist versions of what normally the government with its, SWAT teams, raiding people who pirated software and stuff like that. with NFTs, there's sort of this experimentation, which is to say, this is the official Bored Ape Yacht Club address or whatever, and if you create a knockoff of it, supposedly it's not going to have as much value, even though you can look at it and you can do everything. Well, in fact, you can even look at it without purchasing anything. So to me, I'm still learning about what drives demand for things that you can access without buying them. Like the first tweet, I can just look at that tweet. What does it mean for me to, quote, own the tweet if I can't restrict anyone else from even viewing it? Usually owning lets me at least restrict others from, like if I have a Picasso painting, presumably I can restrict access to it physically, right? And here I can't. So it's very interesting to me how people think about the voluntarist version of this. But ultimately, I think there's a lot to be said, again, about community. I think if, for example, Disney characters were licensed out, like Winnie the Pooh, and you can make animated shorts, like a student in a school, visual design school, whatever, is able to create NFTs, and Disney likes it, then that money that Disney spent, all that money to create a Winnie the Pooh community or Marvel characters or any sort of Star Wars universe, that's a community, and that millions of dollars and billions of dollars have been put into promoting that community. And so if a company decides to allow others to create value, like we were talking about, bottom up, rather than directly hiring everyone in a pyramid, in a corporate pyramid, they allow people in schools to create their own things, and if they like it, they'll bless it with their official thing and feature it. I see those as being ways for the brands to channel all that cachet that they've built up right around their characters into sort of different artists, right? The same way that Marvel Studios might hire Steve Ditko, right, or Stan Lee, who was hired, and give them the opportunity to work with their characters. You could decentralize that, and you could allow anyone to first create the characters' stories, and then if you like it, they'll sort of like almost publish them. So is that a new relationship between publishers of books and or publishers of anything and people creating the content? Because I think that could be really interesting, because then you could shop around and it could redefine the sort of, in my opinion, exploitative relationship that, say, A&R departments of music brands used to have, right? We've already done this with Spotify. Artists can have their own channel. They've had Patreon. But I think the Web3 NFTs takes it to a new level where the artist becomes sort of the, you can sell your own NFTs. But I think if the artist is able to partner with a brand that spent millions and billions of dollars promoting their characters, I think that could be an interesting value creation process as well. And there I could see a lot of value in terms of like people who want a canceled series to be brought back or live on in some sort of comic book or any sort of thing like this. I think communities are all over the place who are willing to spend money to keep going in their respective universes, Star Wars, Marvel, whatever, as opposed to being locked up by Disney Plus or something and shut down like they did with The Tick and all these other shows. Like, I would love to see the community step up and crowdsource and crowd finance sort of this IP. So what do you think in your experience? Do you think this is something, is this a democratizing force? Is Web3 a democratizing potentially platform for this kind of content creation?
I definitely think there's advantages, but also just the disadvantages of what people could do to the original. So, I mean, I don't know how you regulate that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think, yeah, no, I agree with Stacey. It's going to be hard to regulate, especially in a legal way, if people already own these IPs. But going forward, I mean, there might be different platforms and companies that would actually offer and want people to actually continue the stories that they've been telling in a different way within Web3, which would be a very interesting thing to do. And I think it's going to be something that Bored Apes is going to start happening with them soon. I think like a few people actually own Bored Apes, and like they're going to start making cartoons and other stories around them. And if people are happy with that, they can lend out that IP to other people. And I mean, some NFT projects actually have completely open IP, so anyone can literally jump in, even if you don't own it, and start creating projects or stories around everything that's involved with it. So it's going to be very interesting to see where that develops.
Can I just say one thing quickly? We do have a lot of people in the room today, and I just want to let everyone know, we do have 3 special guests. I'm not sure how long the guests are able to stay. So if anybody in the room does have questions that they want to ask the guests or anything, please feel free to jump in at any time. The conversation is open.
I think that's a great point, Stacy. And I just want to reiterate to anyone who's in the room with us, obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, you can't participate in this Telegram. But if you're on Telegram, feel free to step up, grab the mic, and ask and participate. Because
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Brits, we can hear you. Or rather, we could hear you, and then something happened. You've muted your mic. Yeah, if you want to speak up, Jamie, Brits, still a little...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I think since I joined, I'm Brit, my name, I'm Lawrence, and I have listened to at least 3 of the presenters. The Koei app, if I'm correct, and also the Nifty NFT, Real Nifty NFT, and other one that I can't remember now. But please, I would like to have the person that presented on Koei NFT. I think I have some questions I would like us to discuss, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, good. First thing I want to ask, I heard that most projects now, during the presentation, that most of the projects now in the cryptocurrency doesn't actually have any useful utility, and which is correct. And most of them haven't called the shitcoins. I would say that the proliferation of shitcoins in the crypto industry is just for the new adoptions of people that are just coming in to make quick money and dump it. However, in most cases, there are always issues that need to be, to be addressed. And one of the way I think the project is going to really help is that when people start using the app or probably carrying out different activities on the project, it's going to really help. However, I have a question, because what I think could be done on that project is similar to this current token that was released. I think the hype was on it yesterday. GEM, I can't remember. It's from STPN. Do you know that project?
GMT, right?
STPN, yeah, STPN.
Yeah, STPN, step in, or GMT.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kicker. That's the right now. So, kind of thing. If there are a lot of things we need to put into consideration in that regard, I must be honest with you, because looking at their tokenomics as we speak, it has a lot of advantage. At the same time, on the long run, there are a lot of problems. And in fact, I can say categorically that most of the tokenomics that are involved at the back end have been tempted to be
Brits, we lost you.
tokenomics, because as soon as right is said right there.
Where are you calling from? Your connection is a little spotty. I think there might be a lag as well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Where are you calling from? Well, it sounds like he's got a bit of connection issues at the moment. Anyone else would love to jump in? Happy to, Norman or anyone would like to ask a question. I want to sort of tie it all in and just again talk about the community aspect. I think that if you have individual issuers of these coins, whether we have gift cards of different companies, what we can't hear you. You're coming in very spotty.
Can you hear me now? I'm back now. I think I lost you.
Yeah, where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm calling from Nigeria.
Okay, yes. Go ahead.
So, as I was saying, immediately I have gone to the website, and honestly, I see that she has done a lot of work. But looking at the number of years she has spent on the project, I think being here should be an opportunity for her and or the team to always have a step ahead of other projects that are not useful or that do call shit coins. Because at the end of the day, it's not really about getting the project done. It's about getting the project done that can also stand the test of time. I've gotten the book that was presented the end of Monet at the end of morning, the beginning of what's it called? The beginning of civilization. I just got the book not quite long now, and I can tell you that there are a lot of things there that I learned that I felt, being my experience in the field, I would love to actually have a more conversation with her on the way they want to proceed, on probably looking at the tokenomics that they have in existence, or in a way, if they are thinking of looking at possible ways in which they can also have a much more robust tokenomics that is sustainable on the long term. Okay, yeah, I can also cite an instance. One of the major tokens as we speak now that also speak to the market and that has got a lot of not just hype, but we expected it to be successful. It's Luna, Terra Luna community ecosystem. So you can see it's also having a lot of problems as we speak right now. So I'm interested as a person to just see how we can, address some of these key issues. That is if they are interested on the long term. I don't mind.
Yeah, Terra Luna is just for everyone who doesn't know, it's a project to help create money for the internet. There's all these different projects that have the same goal, but it takes a long time to architect it properly. Exactly. And of course the community, right? Everyone's always okay. It comes back to that. Do you want to answer about Coral app? Do you want to answer about what are your future plans? I see here that you're planning to launch in Q1 of 2022. How close are you to launch, and what do you still need to do before it can be released?
Well, thanks for that. And you actually caught an error. We actually updated the Q&A session of the website to push that down further down the roadmap for 2022 to Q3.
Right.
What's left to be done? Like I mentioned earlier, so we just finished our MVP on Polygon, and that's going to be going through a closed test. That's what we're doing right now. So needless to say, I've been walking around a lot, testing out the features and making sure that I'm getting my XP tokens as anyone in the community would want. But in the next few weeks here, we will be going into more of a public test. And then from there, we will be going into, or at least gearing up for our Q3 launch, which means we're going to be doing more of the marketing side and trying to get more people within the blockchain and non-blockchain space to come into the community and kickstart our outreach for the content creators that we'll love to have on the platform. So that's what my next few weeks and months look like, building up to the launch at the end of Q3.
I think you had a good plan for the project in advance. But let me just quickly say this to you in terms of your community build up. One of the things that from the project I've worked with that I say that has actually helped them to put their feet on the ground in advance is building a solid content strategy. Most of successful projects, if you look at Luna, I have someone that works with Luna, and I can tell you that one of their strongest points is that anybody that interested in blockchain can go to their website and can learn tons of information about what they are doing without even needing any assistance from anybody. So simple, so precise. So in that regards, I would like to, maybe after the call here, I would like to have conversation with you around here on how you intend to give out the strategy, your content strategy on the long run, not just now, on the long run, probably after your beta testing or after you release the beta app, the beta version of the app, when it become mainstream. So if you are interested, please let me know.
I want to, by the way, Brits, sometimes you're coming in and out of your connection, but I do want to facilitate people connecting afterwards. We have a lot of people on the call today on the Telegram. I want to invite everyone. If you haven't done so, one moment. I just want to say, if you haven't done so, please go to community.intercoin.org, okay? Because we're all here. If you want to connect after the show and you want to privately message each other, you can do it. We're building our own community. After the show, we all connect on this thing. And Thomas, I think you're on here as well, right? And other people as well. So what you do is you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are, because there might be other people who are interested in your services or your opinions and advice. And then, of course, search for people here. Like, for example, if you want to find Thomas, you can. But if you if you want to connect about the Coral app or anything else, you could feel free to message each other right after the show. I just wanted to let everyone know. So please, if you're on it right now and you're thinking, what should I do? That's what you should do. You should go to community.intercoin.org and just sign up and just create an account and introduce yourself. All right. And from there, you can carry on the conversations, and you can hopefully not just private conversations, but you could continue publicly discussing, because we're talking all the time about this. It's not just on the show that we talk about what we do. So I just wanted to put that out there, because if you want to connect with someone, the community forum is probably the best place to do that.
Okay, I feel like we keep going back to community. Bernice, that's part of our team. She's actually prepared something today where she's just going to go over 5 benefits of community coins. Bernice, did you want to do that now?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I feel like you guys have covered everything today from the topics of, the financial system and NFTs, I think, and about also what you talked about, ownership of your own data. I think it's all there, but let's cover it. Because it's important. Community is very important. Let me just bring up. Just a minute.
Sure. By the way, this is what our community looks like. Your private messages go here. So for example, we're talking about creating a coin for Australian cities like Cowra and Sydney and stuff like that. Other times when Philip is here, you can ask him questions, but you don't have to wait for Philip. You can always contact him on our growing community forum. So that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm ready now.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I wanted to define community coins and why they are important, because somebody would ask, if you have the national currency, why would you need a community coin? Mm-hmm. So first of all, community coins, they help ownership of capital and goods, capital mm-hmm. to remain in the community. So it's good for businesses at the local level, because you don't have to convert. It incentivizes spending locally. So from production to there's no transport. Maybe from the next city, people produce goods as much as they can locally, and they spend it there. So these coins, they allow people to circulate coins just within their towns. So first of all, they encourage local shopping or spending, and then the community can retain its value. And also it strengthens decarbonization, the carbon footprint of the whole town. Because, for example, if you don't have, the coin maybe supports production at the local level, there'll be some materials that won't be coming from maybe with trailers, trains, So that's important for the town. And also increases money supply. So when there's more money, people are more willing to spend, and that's good for the overall production and employment, and also for the economy of the town, the local vibrance of the town. So yeah, I think community coins are very important. And I was looking up how important are they from like local other currencies, because you cannot choose them anywhere else. So if you wanna go to the next town, you have to convert maybe to the national currency. Yeah, and also there's when you come back to the point of community, there's pride, you know. Like if you go into this town and you hear, okay, there's something in this town that's unique from other towns, they use their own coin, and you can see how businesses, they give people options, and maybe they have their also the increases the business opportunities there, because you may find some few people exchanges there, and maybe some local banks also offering these things, the coins, and also they can be issued by private issuers. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the government. Private companies also can issue these coins, but and there are very many coins. People don't know that, but basically it doesn't have to be crypto coins. First of all, it's an old concept. Sorry, and there are many parts of the world where these coins exist, and they're doing good sometimes, but they have to, let's say, major disadvantages. So the first one is they tend there can be volatility or maybe issues with inflation. For example, if there's no accountability on the issuing system, those are the two main weaknesses. So when blockchain came in, that helps a lot, because there's we can enforce a publicly viewable ledger. There's the records are immutable. You can see how the issuance goes, the ratio of issuance to the local currency. So inflation can be accounted for. So everything is transparent. And also it depends on the insurance services, because if communities can get a discount, you know, when they exchange the national currency for the other currency, that's good for them. Yeah, so yeah, that's my take on community currencies. And I think they have so much potential in DAOs. Yeah.
Thank you, Bernice.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Sorry, something's going on with my voice today. The last thing I just wanted to kind of ask about everybody is distribution, marketing. How do you get the currency to be, how do you get people to buy these NFTs, or either fungible or non-fungible? Of course, if they're non-fungible with the NFTs, the price is going to be higher because the coincidence of once is less probable. So, you know, if I have a fungible currency, then I can use it in any amount, right? I can give this amount of rice in feudal Japan for this amount of service. But if I have an NFT, presumably it's not divisible, and so I need to find someone who likes that exact picture and so on. But in general, whether it's fungible or non-fungible, how do you get people to actually use it, right? Because that's really the bottom line, is like adoption. So I wanted to get everyone's take on it. What are your steps that you take to get people to actually care about these currencies or NFTs?
Yeah, okay. In my case, I would look for something that can be used, maybe a service, like, you know, investments, local investments, for example. Different communities have different ways of saving, community-based savings methods. So that will be a great starting point. But also, who are you targeting? Is it everybody? Because that also has to be kind of specific, because not everybody is going to want maybe to buy an NFT. Is this the right answer you're looking for?
I might add
I think
that
it has to be industry specific. Yeah.
this gets us into the question of liquidity. An NFT is analogous to a savings account or a portfolio. Let's say you've got a share of corporate stock or a bond in a corporation or a bag of beans. This is a non-liquid asset. So you need to change the NFT into something that's liquid. In other words, you have to sell it in a market for some liquid claim, like fiat currency or complementary currency or private company currency that can then be used as payment.
So you use that payment to pay for things that you might need or want. Like I see basically the NFT as being something that you don't need, but something that you want. But then when it comes time to actually get something you need, like paying rent or whatever, then people start selling their NFTs and their art or whatever, their, expensive wine bottles.
As I said before, the NFT is a way of storing value. It's a savings medium. So when you withdraw from savings, the value into your checking account or in cash, then you have something liquid that's generally accepted in payment. You could pay with your bag of beans, but you probably won't find too many people that want a bag of beans.
So liquidity is this thing where you have to go and find buyers willing to take on whatever you're trying to sell. And if there's an existing...
You have to convert your illiquid asset to a liquid asset that can be used as payment.
Right, and that in turn requires some amount of liquidity in the first place to go
It requires a market.
Right, a liquid market with some volume of trading, typically.
As far as the NFT itself, whether people value it or not depends on whether they want what the NFT represents.
So that's basically where we're at. And the question is, it seems to me today that most of the demand is a function of marketing. To me, that is a little bit sad. I won't lie. It's sad because if you have to market your product saying that it's, this digital thing that you can get, a lot of times the marketing emphasizes that you'll be able to sell it for more in the future. And to me, that can't be the end game of it, right? What the NFT represents has to have some utility. Now, that's not necessarily the case. I've seen art, and I've always said, art people, I don't understand why they pay for a painting of a square with, a few colors around it. But, there may be some aspects of money laundering here and there, but I think people do buy art for aesthetic uses. And like I said, it's driven by the whales, by the rich people who can hang the art in their homes. But at the end of the day, I think there has to be something more for the common people, for the people who go out every day and buy Gillette razors and buy shoes and food. There has to be, I think, utility. And then you don't have to do as much marketing because people would just virally give it to each other. That's my take, but I'm a very utilitarian guy. So I'm open to hearing the counterpoint of utility is not all there is, and so what are the other sort of benefits of owning an NFT, right? Or an art piece or something like this.
Utility is an overrated concept, in my opinion, in rich Western countries in 2022. Basically, most people have most of their I'm talking about in like rich countries, most people have most of their needs satisfied already, and they can do that for trivially a small amount of income. Like you basically have all your food, shelter, clothing, all of these needs met already. So when you focus on utility, I think that's the wrong thing to focus on if you're running a project that's marketing to Western people who have already all their needs met. What people have to focus on is things that quote unquote fall outside of your scope of utility. So oftentimes, yeah, aesthetics is one thing, right? But if you look at the article of how Sotheby's, for example, how they value art, a big part of it is, things like feeling like you're part of something important, right? Like you can own a piece of art because that piece of art has a story behind it. It was created by like a famous historical figure. And because you want to feel like you're part of something important, you would pay a lot of money for that piece of art. Or, oftentimes if you're marketing a luxury product, for example, to you, maybe a Supreme backpack or like a Louis Vuitton bag is no different from just a regular, rip-off bag, right? But for some people, the social status matters a lot. And I would argue that in most like Western economies, like once you have all your basic needs met, what do you have left? Like what you have left is, people need to feel like they have some kind of social status, right? People need to feel like they belong to like a community. They want to have their identities. They want to lean into their identities and feel like, they're part of something. And so I think there's a lot of, this aspect that, things must pay the rent, or like things must like feed me, and they have to have this kind of like baseline utility. I think that's like a very incomplete framework.
I just wanted to clarify like two things. I think you're right. I wanted to clarify two things about what I said. First of all, I think what you said, Western, by the way, I think in China there's a lot of conspicuous consumption these days, and I've met people in Monaco, right? You and I have met, who are very conspicuously consuming things.
The thing is, you can only eat 3 meals a day. That's like the thing, right? Like if quote unquote eating food is like utility, there's only so much of that you can get. But there's an unlimited amount. Like if you have no self-esteem, there's like an unlimited amount of things you can consume to like boost that gap.
Sure. And so some people have said that about Donald Trump. But I just want to say, but the thing is like, the other thing I wanted to say is that I think there is a huge value in communities exchanging things, which goes beyond food. So when I say utility, there are so many people in the United States today that have trouble with dating. They just have very high standards. They see what other people are getting, and they want to get that too. Of course, not everyone can get the best thing that everyone gets, because there's obviously a statistical distribution. But everyone is sort of holding out. And so it's not just in dating, it's also in achieving things. Like if an entrepreneur, you'll identify with this, is trying to find an investor, or an investor is trying to find new startups to invest in. So the idea is that they're willing to pay, at least these days, to go to conferences, right? To go to these events which bring together all these people. And at least for now, I think that they're willing to pay all these fees, right? The $1,000 to go to Bitcoin Miami conference or this and that. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? And it's because it's not just about belonging to community for the sake of your ego. I really think it's because you're trying to get utility where like, yeah, you have all your food and you have all your rent, even though actually rent is one of the few things I think that isn't going down in price. It's actually the thing that takes up most of people's paychecks, but that and medical expense insurance. But in general, I'm saying even when you have all those things, then you move on to like, okay, I need to start a family. I'm on the clock. I need to find the best partner by this time. And then also you think, if you're ambitious, hey, I'd like to do these stretch goals, like change the world, building my XYZ project. And to do that, I need to access capital, or I need to do this. So I think belonging to a community isn't just because you're just, sure, Paris Hilton may do it just because she wants to belong to the Mensa club or whatever. But most people do it because they want access. They want access to scarce relationships that they can't cultivate on their own. And that's why they go to Harvard rather than going to an equivalent school that will not help them make any connections. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that belonging to a community, yeah, in Western countries, like even after you've eaten and after you've done everything, like why are these celebrities bribing their kids' way into Ivy League schools when they can just as easily get a massive online course on pretty much everything in those schools? I think it's because there's a certain access to a network that currently, and I think with metaverse, it's going to change a lot. I think people are going to be all over the world in these virtual environments, and the whole thing will get commoditized, and colleges and everything are going to get disrupted easily. There's going to be metaverse colleges, I'm pretty sure of that, which will cost a lot less than paying for your kid to live in a dorm for 4 years and go to parties. But I think my question is, like, do you see what I'm saying? I think the utility is from the networking aspect of it as well.
I see a part of what you're saying. I think you're talking about in the context of marketing a product, though. And that's a very specific context that I think you have to keep in mind. I think a lot of these problems can't really be solved with products. Like, if you really wanted to, like, for example, make friends, right? That's like a need that happens like after you eat, right? You might think that, like, you know, being on Facebook all the time might solve the problem, but in reality, like, probably you should just go out more and hang out with people IRL, right? Like, if you're interested in people, like if you're interested in dating people, like Tinder is probably like not the optimal solution for that either. So
I don't know.
I think it's very
think
tricky.
A lot of people do find each other on Tinder, probably more than they find each other in real life bars. But look, I mean, there's alternatives, right? You could go online, you could go offline. But to me, like, a lot of these things, like, there are fans of The Tick, which I happen to be a fan of. I'm a fan of other shows that were canceled, like Limitless. I don't know who other fans are, but I'd like to, so I can go online and join these interest groups, right? To me, it's because I'm trying to get some value out of belonging to that network. And the value is typically, like, if the value could include crowdfunding the next season of The Tick, like, that's huge value. And then I could consume that show that would be produced by all these people, right, that we would hire to do that.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. I could see value in all these things, and I keep not understanding why so much hype and marketing is the space is mostly dominated by hype and marketing when you could have so much value. That's I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a great point, Gregory. And I think if we're looking, for example, a music background when it comes to NFTs, I guess you could almost compare these NFTs to like interactive fanzines in some sort of way for people. For example, there could be an upcoming artist or an artist with a bit of a community already behind him, and he or she could, for example, release, say, 50 NFTs, which would give fans access to certain value within that community. For example, it could give them access to a special VIP room within the Discord, where anyone that owns one of these 50 NFTs would then have access to, say, a conversation with this artist, say, once a week or something like that. And I just feel like you can add other things to that. I mean, you could add, for example, a 10% off of their next tour, or you could have VIP access to their next IRL gig, where you could get in before all the other fans. So I think like that's it. It can add value in certain areas. It doesn't have to be a large community. It can be a small community of people who gather together, like with your tech example there, people who are like-minded, who really want to continue the conversation with like-minded people, and you can't find them in the real world, but you can find the amount of people you want all over the world. And it's also a good place for communities to grow when, with, for example, for people with mental health who aren't able to, say, step out of the house as often or mix with people in the real world. Or, for example, that people are housebound. They can have a new lease of life through these NFT communities, and they even roll into the metaverse.
Well, one of the guys I want to bring on the show, his name is Albert Wenger. He is a partner at Union Square Ventures. It's a fund here in New York City that funded Twitter. They funded Etsy Marketplace. And funny enough, they funded one of their first NFT companies, CryptoKitties, which I, at the time, thought that was crazy that they did that. And I was right about CryptoKitties in particular, but NFTs, they were correct that NFTs would take off. So Albert Wenger, he wrote this book, which is free, and information wants to be free type of way. It's given out free on the website, and it talks about how as a venture capitalist, he's seen a lot of technology, and what he finds is that we're moving towards a post-scarcity world in digital technology. And since everything is becoming digital, including AI and decision-making, and increasingly people are educating themselves online and so forth, the idea is that since the marginal cost of creating that extra copy is almost zero once it's like all the upfront cost has been paid, the question is, why would we have any scarcity? And so if more and more things become digital and go into the metaverse and so on, and I want to ask Thomas this because I think it's an open question, but I'm fascinated by the question of well, if the artist is not performing live anymore, right? Then there's no scarcity, and you can have that artist. You can almost capture everything about them in the metaverse and attend their concerts there. In the future, you could even have an AI literally analyze all the songs the artist sings and just make them sing whatever you want, or change or auto-tune anything. And so if you get to that point, maybe 10 years from now or whatever, 20 years from now, then what are we paying for? What is scarce except for food, shelter? Everything else seems to be commoditized to the point where it's free. And if that's the case, then, we can move to collaborative systems like Wikipedia and Linux and GitHub, where people collaboratively edit these things. And then how do you remunerate them? Well, one way is just don't pay them at all. And that's what we do now with open source. The other way is with Intercoin way is to create a coin for a specific project. And if you provide goods and services like editing, and people approve of your changes, then you can earn some tokens. But at the end of the day, we're moving towards this environment where the money and the tokens are almost how do I say this? They're almost becoming irrelevant because so many people are willing to do a small service for free, like improve this article or fix this bug in Linux. And afterwards, that improvement is just given freely to everybody. So if Tesla improves their self-driving cars algorithm, everyone can just get that at zero marginal cost. So my question to Thomas is are we moving to a world where money might become less and less important because most things become digital? And if that's the case, then, what do you see that economy looking like, basically? I just realized, I think Thomas, I think he had to go because he's not on here right now. Well, I posed a question to everybody, I guess. Norman, you might actually be more interested to answer that because I feel open source until now has not remunerated people for mostly anything. These foundations like Apache Foundation and so on, they've been funded by large corps.
I think where we're headed is we're gonna have we have pockets of scarcity in specific in like certain needs, and then we have things that are like not scarce. So I think you touch on a good point, which is real estate, what you said before. So real estate scarcity is still a thing, right? But I think you're right for like online. For online, like it's hard to do. I think for most digital things, it's post scarcity, and having community owned tokens to like reward people for making edits to Wikipedia. I think that's actually not a bad idea, because I mean once you're in post scarcity and everything has zero marginal cost, then we're gonna have to reimagine a lot of economic systems that we have today. And I think having the Intercoin community tokens might be a cool way. It might be a cool experiment to do that.
Yep, because right now I see a bubble in all of these. Like right now, the World Economic Forum is asking, metaverse real estate prices are booming. This is why. And they talk about how people are buying up plots of land in the metaverse. But of course, unlike regular land, you can just copy paste that that land. And the only scarcity comes from the network effect, where the entire network has just agreed to not do that thing.
Do you also?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you also are you familiar also with the concept of attention economy? I think metaverse plays are also a big part about attention economy, because attention is one of the things that's always going to be scarce, right? Because there is only, I'm talking to you right now. That's attention, right? The fact that I'm talking to you precludes me from talking to my friends. And so attention will always be scarce. There's no solution around that. And quote unquote metaverse land is, I think, an attention economy play. It's a play to figure out which metaverse are people going to be on. In that metaverse, what are people going to be paying attention to, and grabbing a small slice of that attention ahead of time. So that's what I think
that's what Albert Wenger says in his book too. Attention is scarce.
Yeah, I agree with it. Yeah, it seems like that's a line.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I think that in the end of the day, 10 years from now, a lot of the things that we build today with the surging prices will go to zero in the sense of, they're easily copied, and it's just artificial that they're not. And so someone will inevitably make a knockoff that's just as good. And eventually, just like open source projects made a knockoff of proprietary software, right? And now we all use that. So I think that's good. I think that's where society is moving, is commoditizing and making everything cheaply available to everyone. As far as infrastructure, hosting, those things are scarce. I think the ability for humans to moderate a forum, the ability for humans to translate things is scarce. But we're automating all that stuff too. And the big companies already automated, sometimes they get it wrong and you're pissed off when Facebook puts you in Facebook jail. But the translation is mostly okay. And so we're even going to get to a world where the bots are the ones spending their money and their resources and their attention. Of course, they'll have a lot more attention, maybe 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more than a human. And at that point, the attention won't be scarce either. If the bots have all this money that they're trying to spend on whatever, then you'll try to cater to the bots too. So I'm even thinking
Why bots? Hold on. Why bots? How are bots substitutable for human attention?
Well, human attention is only important to the capitalist enterprises because they're going to make money from the human spending their money on something, right?
Correct.
So if a bot has a lot of money and it's looking around to invest in something, right, then you're going to actually cater to the bot if the bot can spend more money than the human.
Why would the bot have money to invest in?
Well, presumably, it could be some sort of fund It could be some sort of DAO. It could be just something where the bot can make more money by deploying its money somewhere. But you're right. The bot doesn't really want to consume anything for its own ego. So it's going to pay for things like trying to invest in new projects, which will give it better returns or whatever. I don't know why bots would be written for all kinds of purposes, I guess.
I think that's interesting. Like, I'll have to see it to believe it.
But yeah, I think ultimately consumption of content is done by humans. The bots would only do it in order to resell the content, but to humans, right? Like a bot might eventually... Okay, so let's say there's a bot that creates a ton of AI combinations of NFTs, right? Like millions of NFTs, billions, trillions of NFTs. Then there's another bot that curates those in a prediction market where it tries to predict what people will pay for and what they find the most aesthetically pleasing, right? If you can get...
No, your thesis is busted. Your thesis is busted because in a world where AIs create unlimited NFTs, the value of all NFTs go to zero because there's no scarcity anymore. So the second bot has no profit opportunities because the first bot ruins the scarcity.
Well, curation is important when you're getting all that content. But yes, everything will go to zero if people's attention is scarce, okay? But the bots can produce unlimited content. Then it would be the bots, the producers of content that would pay people to even view their NFTs. In other words, if there's so much production and people don't even want to consume all of it, then the formula will flip and people will actually be paid to view NFTs rather than pay, because why would you buy an NFT if there's like a million other... But again, I'm talking as a utilitarian.
Right. I think people would not be paid to view NFTs. People are only paid to view content because you expect to make greater return from what you're paying them. And at the point where like everything is post scarce, when people are being at the point where everything is post scarce, we'd have to invent a totally different model because that one would just be, I think it would be busted because the reason why you pay people to look at your content is because you have a marketing funnel and you can sell people stuff down the road. But if the thing that you're selling down the road is post scarce, then you're not going to be able to recoup the money you spent for the user. And so users, I don't think they're going to be paid to, at least not money, to look at content.
Well, with influencers, you pay them to shill your content or to review your content. So people with a lot of I guess who you would pay for is the influencers, the people who have attention of their fans. Right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes. Influencers. So influencers buy and sell attention. So they run a giveaway on Twitter, and so they're buying followers, and then they sell that attention back to projects that are looking to market. And so that's the trade for influencers.
That's very well said. I think ultimately, and I want to end on this topic, is that influencers are merchants of attention, right? They build up all of this platform, and they may or may not have some utility behind the platform. It may be purely for entertainment. And then they turn around and they rent out the attention, right, to people who they're the kingmakers. They decide to do this or that. And so, like anything else, these influencers can be more effective if they have tons of capital. If they are Columbia Records, or if they are, MGA Studio Pictures, Fox, 20th Century Fox. And so they create all these famous actors, they create their careers, and then these actors go on to have millions of Twitter followers, and then these actors themselves deploy all that to, funnel money into different projects and different things using their social capital, their attention capital, if you will. So I think if I think Intercoin is able to flip that, and I think by creating an app for these influencers, they pay us, right? Or at least they do it for free. Like, in other words, the influencers get a valuable service and a multiplier out of what we do that they don't currently have. But eventually, even what we do will be commoditized because they'll just have a white label thing that does everything we do. So at some point, I think it's very interesting to see what will happen.
Here's my take on how the influencer market is going to evolve. So most influencers are also going to go to zero because they're selling BS to their users, and people's attention span is limited. So every time you sell some BS to your users, you lose their attention a little bit. And that's why a lot of influencers eventually they do go broke. Because after you can sell BS to your users once or twice, but you can't do it over and over again. Like, people eventually catch on and they don't do it anymore. The real sustainable influencers these days, the stuff that they sell to their users or that they promote to their users, they actually reward people for giving them their attention. So every time someone pays attention to your Twitter post or to your show, it should create some kind of value to your user. And that way your attention capital is, quote unquote, is continuously compounded and not wasted. So if you're an influencer, you shouldn't sell a BS course. You should actually drop some real alpha that people like what you're doing in the shitcoin trading group. Like, if you make a couple of good calls, people are going to pay more and more attention to you, right? But if you're calling, stuff that you already pre-pumped, then they're going to move on to the next group. And so in the future, that's how I think, and that's how I think the influencer market is going to play out. And it's a matter of whether you can deliver value to your users. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, that's interesting. Anyway, we've come full circle. I'm the one who always cares about creating value, and I'm always harping on creating value. I think the Tick and all these shows that were canceled, I mean, what do you really get out of watching them? Well, you get satisfaction. You get to see your characters develop and creating these worlds. Ultimately, I do think that people find value in all kinds of things that we might not find value in, but other people do. And so I'm not here to judge how they find value. I happen to enjoy, the Marvel Universe and a couple other things. So I'm willing to spend some money on that. And people can spend money on recipes for food or whatever. But at the point where the content is being created in a non-scarce way, I think it would be very interesting to observe, because at that point, you could have anything you want. You could have an AI create an episode of The Simpsons that does anything you want. And at that point, we just have a completely different economy. We'll just have to see what people will care about at that point. But at the moment, I think influencers are the merchants of attention. And I think that is where marketing ultimately goes. It's either corporate marketing, like Fox News, My Pillow guy, or whatever. And if you can make a good deal and it happens to work out, people make money. And 99% of those deals may lose money. But that one deal that makes money inspires everyone else to keep doing that thing on that platform or whatever it is. I think that's what currently drives society. I think people have enough food, like you said, they have enough everything in the rich Western countries. And frankly, now in China too, because it has reduced poverty massively. And I think India is on track to do that next. But I think ultimately people have everything they need. Maybe we'll have a UBI. And so all of these things on top of that is just a question of value is a no-brainer for me, right? There's tons of things we could build with software and other things that have value, right? Elon Musk is building the Hyperloop, or he's building solar city and these cars. So there's obviously a lot of value to be created. But besides that, there's a lot of sort of like this other stuff. And I think it's very interesting to observe. I can't say much about it except to say that it's driven by marketing. And that's where almost most of the money is. Most of the money is in all this entertainment / new stuff, like non-directly valuable stuff, you know? So I think that it's an interesting space. It's an interesting space, and it will keep getting disrupted by automation more and more, because if it's easy to create all that value digitally, why would people pay for it 10 years from now? You know, I don't have an answer, but it seems that for now, people do it because it's new and interesting. And in 10 years, I don't know. I really don't know what will happen. All right. Anyone else have any questions? I'd love to sort of wrap it up in the show. Just let me know if you have anything you'd like to discuss, and we can call it a day. All right, Stacy, is there anything else you'd like to bring up before we end the show?
No, that's great. I want to thank everyone for coming.
Likewise. All right, everybody, thank you for coming. As usual, we try to deliver as much value as we can on the show. Hopefully we have a lot of interesting discussions. We don't just discuss this, we actually build it. Be prepared, because NFT Remix is coming out fairly soon. The Intercoin app is coming out even sooner than that. We'll have a show about all these things. I love that Thomas was able to stop by today to give some economic insight on some of these things. I'm having an interview with Noam Chomsky May 23rd. There's a bunch of other people who I'll announce in the next few months. Stacy also. Stacy, can we say about Sir Mix-a-Lot, or not yet about that?
No, I don't have him confirmed for this one yet. I just have him confirmed for Thursday.
Okay, fantastic.
On something different.
That's something. Okay. So we'll anyway keep. If you like, please put this show on your calendar. But please, everybody, if you want to continue getting updates, please join the community forum. All right, and you go to community.intercoin.org. All the shows, all the stuff will be there. And in a couple weeks, you're going to be able to get the Intercoin app. You're going to go to, instead of going to community.intercoin.org, you'll probably just go to intercoin.app. Right now, if you go to intercoin.app, you won't see very much. But if you go to intercoin.app in about 2 to 3 weeks, everything you see here, including community forum, will be neatly organized. All the shows are coming up, the guests, the people, the NFTs. You can earn NFTs by being a guest. You can get your own app by being a guest on the show. In fact, that's one of the requirements. Getting your own app is being on the show. A lot of stuff we do is currently valuable. 5 years from now, it may not be. It might be commoditized. Currently, it's valuable. So definitely, if you're interested in this stuff, join us on the forum, have your voice heard, and see you on the next show.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.